Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being with us in person. Thank you for being with us online. Welcome to this fourth anticipatory briefing. These are academic-led sessions where we bring topics from the GESDA Breakthrough Radar to life by showcasing their impact in the next 5, 10, and 25 years. So the format is 15 minutes presentation followed by Q&A. So please prepare some questions for our speaker. Today, it's someone who works on structural biopolymers and nano manufacturing to design biomaterials with application in precision agriculture, food security, and food safety. He's an associate professor at the prestigious MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology since 2015. Before that, he was at Politecnico di Milano and McGill University. He's also the co-founder of Mori, which is a startup that commercializes silk-based edible food coatings to extend shelf life and reduce packaging of fruits and vegetables. He'll tell us more about that. With him, we will explore how innovative agricultural technologies and novel food sources will contribute significantly to sustainably feed the global population in the next 5, 10, and 25 years. Please help me welcome Benedetto Marelli.
So hello, everybody. I'd like to start by showing you this. This is a strawberry, as you may see, but this is a very special strawberry. It's a strawberry because it's coated with an ancient material, a material that is also part of my suit. And the materials, as you can see from here, is silk. So silk is a textile. We experience it as a textile, but in reality, silk is a protein, right? It's something we can extract, and we experience silk as a fiber, but it can come together as a bioplastics, and we can have silk in suspension, so we can have silk in water. We call it liquid silk. What is special about liquid silk is that once you try to spray it on food, for example, what happens is that water evaporates and the materials comes together to make a coating or a membrane. And this membrane is very, very perfect. It's special, is defectless, so there's no nano holes in it. It is tasteless, it is invisible, it is odorless and colorless, and it does three things very well. It makes a membrane that protects the food, in this case, so that the strawberry that I show you doesn't become as the strawberry that you see. And it does three things I was saying. So it keeps the oxygen out. So the oxygen that is typically responsible for browning of food is kept outside. It keeps the water in, so the food doesn't lose its value by losing its weight, but it also can be extended when it comes to the shelf life. And it slows down microbial growth. So we are decreasing the growth of microbes that can cause decay on our food. And so what we do with this, well, we can thinking about then making this technology available to everybody by scaling up the technology so that, for example, we can start coating leafy greens with it. And you can see the difference between a baby kale that is coated or non-coated with silk. The next stage then is to have the regulatory approval, which we got in more than 12 nations, covering more than 1.1 billion people, and then commercializing the technology so that people can, and the environment can benefit from it, because the technology allows you to pack more food on trucks so that you decarbonize the transportation of food, and also you decrease the rejection rate of food that doesn't look good from the farm to the final stage, okay, so which is, for example, the processing. This is just one of the innovations that we need to be able to answer a very basic yet very pressing question. How do we feed a world of 10 billion people? We're going to add 2 billion people to the world, yet we run out of arable land. We have the massive threat of climate change that is going to affect the food and agricultural industry. At the same time, we have limited resources, and we need to maximize the output while minimizing the input. But this is not the first time the agri-food system had to do this. When I was in elementary school 30 years ago, we were 6 billion people. Last year, we became 28 billion people. So how did we do it? Well, we embraced the concept of precision agriculture. So we were able to more precisely deliver inputs into our food an agri-food system industry so that we could maximize the output. We embraced new plant varieties, we became better in irrigation, and we also started to make more technical orchards, such as so that we can use, for example, GPS navigation in our trucks and big data analysis. However, there's a new player in town that is going to really help us in the future, and this is bio-nanotechnology. Now, bio-nanotechnology has two parts in the word that starts to make you nervous probably when it comes to food, because there is the bio, which may be echoing bioengineering food, and at the same time nano, which means going very, very down to the scale, and many people think that nano could become toxic. However, we are a living system, we are a living tissue as a human body, and food is typically a living system, and they happen at the nanoscale, so life happens at the nanoscale, and at the same time requires bioengineering to be able to progress it. So this bio-nanotechnology will really spearhead innovation. However, in order to have an impact, we need to make new policies that are able to regulate it, and we also need to foster public acceptance and adoption in different parts of the world. So what this bio-nanotechnology can give us? Well, it's going to give us new nanosensors that we can think about deploying in the environment so that we can understand better how how the ecosystem works and how we can preserve it better. We're going to make new biomaterials, like the one that you saw, for example, silk, that are going to be able to substitute plastics over time and to make new plastics that are more biodegradable and circular. We're going to be able to have fermentation at scale, so using microbes to produce our own food. And the big challenge here, the technological gap, is how can we make it at scale? And then we're going to start engineering organism and engineering communities, which doesn't necessarily mean having GMO at the end. It also depends on the definition that you have on GMO. But it means be sure that organisms work together to increase the output of food. And so, for example, in the pictures that you see here, these are crops that we grow in Morocco, in Ben Guerir, with a local collaborator, University UM6P. And in this case, we take bacteria from the soil. So these are plant growth promoting bacteria that are indigenous of the soil of Morocco. These are bacteria that fix nitrogen and solubilize phosphate, so we are decreasing the amount of fertilizers. So we extract the bacteria from the soil, we expand them, and then we encapsulate them on the surface of seeds so that they survive desiccation. And then when we put the seeds back into the soil, these bacteria can rapidly colonize the plants and can help boost the plant health, so that at the end, as you see, these biofertilizers treated, so these microorganisms treated seeds, establish plants that give us better crops and crops that are more fortified. Okay, so they address not only an increase in yield, but also an increase in the quality of the crop. And this is a very simple approach that we can use, and it is enabled by the simple technology of having a biomaterials that allow microbes to survive desiccations without the use of refrigeration of the surface of the seed. So bio-nanotechnology will not only allow us to do this, but we really have an impact on three main thrusts of the agri-food systems. It's going to allow us to engineer crops and livestock. It's going to allow us to design better ecosystems and to have agriculture be part of the ecosystem, so that and not an antagonist to the ecosystem as we see it now. And more importantly, it also allows us to reimagine new type of foods. This is very important because as we're going to add 2 billion people and we don't have land, as we said before, agriculture alone, the classical agriculture, may not be enough to supply enough food. And so we can think about adding new technologies that can provide food for us, of course, provided that there's acceptance. So what's the perspective in the next 5 years? Well, in the next 5 years, I think is where we have the most confidence as a scientist to understand what's going to happen. First of all, these microbes, these biofertilizers that we also heard about in the previous panel, they're really going to become more and more prominent. There are already companies that are commercializing them. We are understanding much better how we can use them. I would say they work very well in marginal land at the moment. So we know that if we put them in marginal land when the plant doesn't have enough phosphate and enough nitrogen particularly available, and this technology works very well with legumes at the moment, the plants are going to recruit the microbes to boost their health. And so this is going to become a reality and something we will be able to exploit better in the next 5 years. At the same time, as the climate is changing, we need to project technology that will help plants support the blunt trauma of a changing climate, right? Which is typically an increased temperature, which is going to decrease the amount of the efficiency the plant have to make our crops. And so we need to find ways to start improving photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is, well, the reason why everybody here is alive, but is also how the plant generate their own food. And so we need to understand how we can help plant generating their own food so that they become more resilient to climate change. And so we're going to use bionanotechnology together with artificial intelligence to start understanding how to improve photosynthesis. When it comes to nanosensors, so we're going to deploy the nanosensors ubiquitously in the environment. And at the beginning, again, the nanosensors can be perceived as something that is toxic. In reality, over time, we're developing nanosensors that are made also by biopolymers, so nanosensors that are more tolerated by the environment. But by doing that, we can start monitor soil and another topic that is very important, which is pollinator health. Okay, so we need to understand really how to build a better ecosystem, and so we need to start extracting a lot of information from the ecosystem to understand how different communities and different populations work together. And the nanosensors will allow us to get really, really big data on this. And at the same time, once we have this knowledge, we can start developing genome editing tools so that the different communities can work together to improve the ecosystem health. And then the recent advancement in making new type of food will start to hit the market, I would say. So particularly if you reside in several countries, you already start eating the product of vertical farming. Vertical farming will become more and more prominent. It still needs to address some of the major bottlenecks, which is the cost of energy and the efficiency. But as we're going to work to improve it, vertical farming, particularly in several parts of the world where soilless agriculture is needed, is going to be a prominent way of getting your calories, but also your nutritional value. The biofertilizers that we discussed before are going to reach the market even more prominently. And the first attempts of biomass fermentation, so using microorganisms to produce nutritional part of our diet, like polysaccharides, fats, proteins, is going to start to hit the market as well. The nanosensors, I would say, they can also start to be commercially deployed. And the interesting part, I think an interesting model that have been developed and we're continue developing is the concept of cell-tinded plants. So these are plants that are packed with nanosensors, so they can really report to us what they feel. And we can put them directly in the orchards or in the farms, but they're going to be biocontained at the beginning. Okay, so they will not produce crop that we're going to eat, but they're going to be in a statistical significant way positioned in the orchard so that they sense threat, they sense stress, and they can tell us what they're feeling so that we know what the neighboring plants that are crop bearing are feeling. Now, we stop with the very high level of confidence and we move towards the low level of confidence when it comes to the 10 years perspective. But I would say the efforts in increasing plant photosynthesis will enable us to actually make plants that have an enhanced photosynthesis. We really need, as we heard also before in the panel, to change how we treat plants when it comes to preventing diseases. And so the synthetic pesticides will likely be replaced by bio-based pesticides, such as, for example, RNA vaccines that we can think about deploying to plants. Climate change will be very, very harsh in transboundary pests and disease that can spread. And so being able to actively and very rapidly react to it is very important. We're going to start to eat meat that comes from engineered livestock. Okay, so we need meat to produce less greenhouse gas emissions, and so we can start engineering livestock and engineering the feedstock of the livestock to decrease the carbon intensity of meat production. And finally, we start to have cropless agriculture. Cropless agriculture means that we take the CO2 from the environment, we fix it to form polysaccharides, and then or sugars, and then we give the sugars and we use them as a feedstock to bacteria or to microbes to make new food. And this is really the projection that we're going to have at 25 years, but it's going to start 10 years from now. When it comes to the ecosystem designer, I think that 10 years from now, we really have to change how we're dealing with pesticides, and hopefully the technology will be mature enough to do it. Of course, maybe it starts from the global north, and then it will spread from the global south. Hopefully, the opposite starts, right? We can engage the new agriculture that is going to be in the global south, and using them as our test bed to test our new technologies to protect pollinators. But from a global strategy perspective, we need to have global rules in place so that everybody respects pollinators at the global perspective. And we will start engineering plant and microbial communities. Okay, so the idea of using microbes in the soil as in a positive way to help the ecosystem, help biodiversity, and also boost agriculture is gonna increase in its intensity and will require our engineering. And so we're gonna start basically engineering it in the lab. When it comes to the new food that we can produce, fermentation is the major bottlenecks to make it at scale, and so we're really gonna push it. We're gonna start to make synthetic meat and fish that taste like the real one, and eventually we're gonna use AI and gene editing tools to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And then now where I have the glass ball to project the future, 25 years, so when I become old, hopefully we will have new cereal strain. There is also a push to domesticate, of course, new cereal strain and to use new crops, but also maybe to have perennials that can produce our cereals to some extent, right? So what if cereals are a perennial plant now? We are gonna really have microbes and plants that work well together, and there's gonna be a broad adoption of lab-grown meat. The ecosystem will really be monitored heavily using the nanosensors, so we're going to have a very broad surveillance in place, and we're really going to foster agriculture as to be integrated into the ecosystem, and this is a concept that we also heard before in the panel. And we're going to design our own microbes that will allow us to do it. And at the end, we're going to be able to deploy. If we still are using chemical pesticides and fertilizers, we're going to be able to deploy them precisely using nanocarriers. We're going to be able to ferment our proteins so that they're also be used as our medicine, right? So what if in the future, when we make our own food, that food is also part of our personalized diet? And so that's part of the picture, of course, together to be sure that crop and soil work together so that we can really maintain a very good biodiversity in the soil using biofertilizers. So to end, I want to thank you for your attention, and I hope that I convinced you that Bionano technology is an opportunity so that we're able to understand the rules of life and also ensure a sustainable food production. But this is not possible unless acceptance is reached. And so we need everybody to be educated, and we need policy in place. Thank you very much.